Seekers, welcome back. Zach here. This is an unexpected post, but CNN has had up this cover story for the majority of the day with the exact same headlines. Because they have this up, I'm just going to use it as a teaching moment and show you how this headline is connected to the word El Nino, the monsoon season, and Jesus Christ. If you were not aware, El Nino is named after Jesus Christ, which we will get to. Earlier today, this was the picture CNN was using, but the same headline, significant and strengthening, El Nino may be biggest on record and last until spring. Same words, they've just updated the picture. 4-hour gap in pictures here. In the story of Jesus Christ, the number 33 is very important because he was crucified at 33. If you're new to my channel, I talk about the pairing of 33, 47, 74 very often. That is relevant in this story of El Nino. The Oxford professor who first named El Nino, who was studying this phenomenon, he also gave us the word monsoon. And they both come from the same study, this research in the Pacific on the wet seasons of the year. And notice they both have 33 gematria. If you read about El Nino on Wikipedia and elsewhere, it's not just on Wikipedia, it is mentioned how the phrase El Nino means Christ child or Jesus. So, the gematria syncs up with the story of Jesus, 33 being oh so significant to him. And of course, Jesus is the figure in the Bible. In the Bible, the first book is Genesis, which also has the gematria of 33. There's a lot of 33 coded into the Bible. So this phrase right here, significant and strengthening, that they put the emphasis on, has gematria of 137, which is interesting because 137 is the 33rd prime number. And down below, they also said this may be the biggest on record. They could have used a different word, but they went with biggest. Biggest happens to be a word with 33 gematria. All these 33 tributes. And what's concerning about this is the people who do this are people with ill intentions and people who control knowledge and power that is not known to the general public. And there are many people in this world who argue that warfare through weather modernization is a very real thing and something that's been going on for decades. And when I first woke up to the fact that this was even a possibility in this world was after Hurricane Katrina. And back then, whenever I found out things, I liked to pass them through my mother just to see how she would respond, because my mom, she's very mainstream American, but she sees the truth in some things. For example, she always saw the truth of 9/11 too. That day never fooled her. However, when I say that she saw the truth, she sees a little bit more slanted. She thinks it's all the Bush family, but anyway, she just knows not to believe the bullshit. So, I passed this through her. I heard about Hurricane Katrina, weather modification, HARP. That was the first time I heard of HARP, way back in 2005 when Hurricane Katrina happened. I told my mom about it, and she said, "Oh boy, Zach, that is crazy talk." The reason I bring this story up is because back then I didn't think it was crazy talk, even though my mom did. But my mom, becoming more and more awake over the years, she sees the chemical spraying going on in the sky. And anyone who lives in Portland, Oregon, it's impossible not to see, because Portland is very heavily sprayed. I live in Seattle where they do a fair amount of spraying, but every time I go down to Portland, I'm like, what in the world is going on down here? Why are they doing so much spraying in Portland? For people who argue that they think it's to combat pollution from cities, Portland and Seattle are perfect examples of that's not what's going on. Because Seattle is much more populated than Portland, and if they were spraying for those reasons, Seattle would surely be getting sprayed more than Portland. Anyhow, we should really think about all this stuff. How much power, how much influence do the madmen running the show who taunt us with these headlines have? How much are they controlling the extreme weather going on in this nation right now? you know? Here up in the Pacific Northwest, for the first time in my lifetime, I turned 32 this year. For the first time in my lifetime, the mountains didn't open during ski season. No snow in the mountains. First time in my lifetime. Then this year, summer started about 3 months ahead of schedule up here in the Pacific Northwest. No joke. So far, the hottest part of summer has been June and the first half of July. Typically, the hottest part of summer is the end of July and August. It's been cooler since June and July. Things are just way off. Way off. And True Seeker, just to reveal something about myself, I used to pick magic mushrooms. The reason I say I used to is because the last time I picked this spot that used to be so great, it resulted in a foot race with me and a state trooper. I was more committed to running through some blackberry bushes than he was. Anyhow, from that same season where that happened, the whole season was off. I'd never had problems picking magic mushrooms before. I knew this spot to pick them. Great patch where cyan essence grew. And, typically they would start growing in the beginning of October. But this year that the foot race happened, they didn't grow in the beginning of October. And they didn't grow in the middle of October. And typically the window for them is about 1 month. They only grow for a month of the year. This season, the year that it happened, which is a few years ago now, they didn't grow until the beginning of November, more than a month late. And ever since then, it seems like the seasons have just been getting more and more off, like I'm saying right now. Our summer's off by almost a full season here in the Pacific Northwest. Even right now, it's hotter than it normally is in most years, but it hasn't been scorching hot like it was in June and the beginning of July, which typically up here is when it's still kind of cool and rainy. And I know it's not just the Pacific Northwest. Everywhere in the world, the weather is off. There was a stretch of 2 weeks where Alaska had higher average temperatures than Arizona. I mean, how does that even happen? So I just wanted to give this little lesson about El Nino and then talk about how crazy the weather is. Truth Seeker, we ask ourselves why we're bombarded with all these nonsensical stories at the rate we are these days. And part of the reason for that is I think we, as a society, need to be more distracted than we have in the past so that we tune out all the very clear signs around us of the things that are really wrong with the world. People's minds are on shootings, kidnappings, murder, all these things that do exist in the world but aren't really that big of a threat, while tuning out all the real dangerous signs around them, such as the drastically off weather, droughts in some areas, excess rain in others. We got to wake up, people. If you ask what am I doing? Let me tell you what I'm doing. I'm 32. When I was 18 after 9/11, my mind went into overdrive and I wanted to figure out some more lies. And I had all sorts of curiosities about food, and I read a lot about food. And I realized right away that by changing our diets, we could do a lot of good for this planet, for ourselves, from, literally saving the environment and resources, to improving our health, to improving our mental clarity, to improving our consciousness, how we treat others. All this stuff is very real, connected to food and who we are as people. And it makes so much sense because food is the fuel of our body. What we put into it gives us our outputs. Sure, we can survive on junk that tastes good, but a lot of us don't realize the opportunity cost of what we would be if we were on, say, a healthier, more beneficial diet. So I've gotten a little bit tangential here, but, these headlines, there's something about it, Truth Seeker. They have more weather in store for us. In this last decade, we've seen unprecedented storms from New Orleans to New York to all sorts of other parts of the world. Here in the United States, we focus so much on our nation, but crazy things are going on all over. The weather's off worldwide. And my question for you is, how much of it is Mother Nature and how much of it is influenced by these madmen. Like I said, my mother thought it was crazy talk 10 years ago. These days, she's listening and paying attention and thinking something's up. So I know if my mother's that way, your mother could be that way, your father, your brother, your sister, who's ever been tuning you out. Friends, family, they can all wake up too. Everybody's slowly waking up a little bit more, myself included. All right, Truth Seeker, until next time.